People of the earth, and rockers everywhere. Welcome to my YouTube lesson today, which is the intro to Panama, or Panama, or as the drunk girl at the Van Halen concert I last went to said, I don't know which one's Van, but I just hope they play Panorama. I said, and she sounded like Lauren Bacall or maybe David Lee Roth. I don't know. And she looked like David Lee Roth more than Lauren Bacall, let me tell you. But it's she. I said, darling, okay, well, you wake me up when I get to the chorus, and I hope you sing Panorama. Also, this is kind of an intro into Eddie's guitar rhythm playing and rhythm style, which is different from almost anybody else's. Anyway, so the intro to Panama, which we'll get into now, goes like this. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. So let's break that down now. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about what makes this rhythm style so great. Eddie's known for his, obviously his lead playing and interruption and tapping and all this kind of stuff. But he's my top five rhythm guys of all time. My top five rhythm guys of all time who wrote the books. They were the guy who wrote the books on the style that everybody else adopted. Number one, Jimi Hendrix. With all his chord melody playing. Then Malcolm Young. Malcolm's sitting there. He's chopping on that Gretsch Falcon. And plays 12 to 56 strings, or he did, God rest his soul, through Marshall Majors, But it's really, a lot of things, sometimes what I'll do is I'll warm up with Back in Black if I haven't been playing in a while. I learned the whole record, just not Angus's solos, I learned all of his rhythm parts, which it's highly recommended for anybody to do. And then, and we'll study the Hendrix style of rhythm playing later on. But then Keith Richards, which is basically, use the Nashville tuning with the top E string off sometimes, and he was one of the premier founders of that style of rhythm playing, and of course Van Halen, and then the almighty James Hetfield with his really fast downstrokes and palm muting, and these guys, their tone was a big part of it, but their tone, like Ed always says, it comes in your hands and you see in your fingers, really. And that's what I'm going to show you today of how he's getting some of these sounds from just, his hands. I used to think he had a black box he would use. It's like, because Ed always sounds, a certain way. It's him. It's just like you always knew. Like I always tell Angus Young by his tone and his vibrato. Certain players are like that, and then the Hendrix style playing. But Ed always had this certain thing about him. The je ne sais quoi is what I call it, of guitar playing. It's in his fingers, So I think this originated in the garage when him and Al were, figuring out what they were going to do musically and stuff like that. And there was nobody else really involved except their father. Every once in a while they did gigs with, and they're bashing it out, learning how to play as very young teenagers. And when they actually switched instruments, excuse me. And if you ever notice, like Van Halen, like Alex, rides the crash cymbal a lot of times in choruses because it's that fills out the sound a lot. And then Eddie does this pick thing with palm mutes, and pedal tones that is pretty unique. It's kind of difficult to do until you get it down. I remember when I was in Dave Roth's band, he used to yell at Ray Luzier a lot of times, Roger Crash, was here, you know, because, I mean, Ray's an amazing drummer. Don't get me wrong. He's a monster, one of the best there ever was. But it's kind of awkward for a drummer to, you know, switch up like that, and you know, because usually you're just riding your ride cymbal in a chorus or something like that most of the time. But a lot of rock drummers have adopted that over the years. So Ed's thing was you know, these pedal tones were to sound like, you know, maybe there's actually two players, you know, doing something like that, where the rhythm guitar player would play that. So in Panama, he's doing that, and it's what I call the Van Halen bounce. And it's really subtle stuff. So he starts out just doing like a palm mute on, you know, I'm playing 7 on the 5th string. He just does 2 there. And then I'll lift my hand up so I'm not muting the treble strings, and I'll use an upstroke, and I'll snap the triad in there. So it's, and so something else I'm doing there is right after I do the snap, I'll release the pressure of this finger here, so it mutes out. So it's a series of muting with this hand and lifting up, and you know, lifting up and going back and, you know, back and forth with a mute, you know. And that's technically a mute. I mean, when you release pressure, you know, off a string, you know, that's another type of mute. It's a left-hand mute, and that's usually not denoted in tablature, you know, but left-hand muting is a very big part of this. So he starts out with the 2 picks and a triad, and an E chord. Then he adds a suspended 4th in there, so it's E sus. 2 more picks in that, and then 2 more palm mutes on the 5th string, and then he plays this B major triad. And just, you know, I bar it because I'm bored. Very subtly, you know, I'm you know, you can't really see that much unless I exaggerate how I'm lifting pressure off of each one of these, you know, to make the snap. So it sounds like, you know, one guitar player is going. It does the same thing in D. Let me add, there's 1 hit in there. Because this song comes in on the upbeat on the end of 1, and he does that to turn it around, to flip it around. I mean, he probably didn't sit and think about that. He just does it, you know. So then it goes to a C sharp minor chord. Open pedal on the 4th string there. And then it's a B chord here to B sus. He slides it down to an A chord here. And he plays a harmonic on the 2nd fret, 5th string. And C sharp again. And he does a little trill there where he lifts the minor 3rd up and goes to the 2nd. Then B sus B again to A. And then light palm mute. And then plays this B sus chord here like this. I'm playing this note here. And then the E string open. I'm kind of muting the 4th in there. And then this one. And so then he just picks it. And there's a harmonic on 1. I mean, 1st string, yeah. And then 2, 3. So then it's frets 5, 4, 4. Then he hits them together, strings 2 and 3 there on the end of it. So that's the intro. So that's the intro, the panorama, as the drunk girl says. Um, and you can hear it in other things. I just listened to a thing on YouTube where he was interviewed by Steve Rosen from Guitar Player magazine. It's like 78, December of 78, and they just had finished recording Van Halen 2. It came out in 79, but it was recorded, I believe, in December of 78. And he's playing clean through an amp. So this is kind of how he's playing like some of the songs off of it, like Beautiful Girls and Women in Love and one of them, Light Up the Sky. And he does this thing of Light Up the Sky where he's playing the pedal tone with his thumb, and he's letting the chords ring out underneath. I'll probably play some of that wrong. It's been years, but yeah, so you can see where it's going. He's letting that chord ring out and plays the pedal tone with his thumb. Now it's kind of hard to do that like this. You can do it. It's a little more awkward. I find the thumb to be more conducive. Great song. And I cut some of them off there just kind of to show you what it sounds like when you cut them off versus the rings, because if you cut it off. I mean, it still sounds cool, but it's not, it doesn't sound, doesn't sound as full. Another place he does it that's real obvious. Well, the Dance the Night Away, where he's pedaling on four, it's kind of like Panama. He's playing these triads. It's so close. I started playing Panama again. He's just pedaling off the four string and playing triads. So you can really make a whole rhythm thing out of this, and put it in some of your own stuff. I mean, it's great because you can use it in any kind of chordal situation, and it just adds a whole element of sound to the to the part. It works across a bunch of stuff. That was a song I wrote a long time ago that was on one of my ill-fated second albums that never came to be after the first album, which is often the case. Sophomore effort that never was. And then he does it, there's little techniques where you've got to just kind of cock your hands a certain way, like the end part in Mean Streets where it's. Say something. I call that Mean Streets. It's not Mean Streets. It's Mean Street. I apologize. So if there's Van Halen fans out there, they're going to jump all over me for me just saying that. So there, I'm not using my thumb to play the note. It's actually muting the string out. And then I play and I cock my hand backwards so that I'm not muting at all. Except when I bring it back down I take my thumb and I'm bringing it back down on the fifth string, so it's because it's got that syncopated part in it, you know. And I see guys they don't ever they kind of leave that part. They kind of just kind of go and cut it off, but that's not what it is. It's ringing out. I mean, he's probably not even consciously doing this. I mean, it's just stuff that, you know, he a lot of times when guys are so innovative like this, you know, they're geniuses, but it's out of necessity. You know, say necessity is the mother of all invention. That's somewhat true because, um, you know, he was just trying to make the sound as big as possible. There's very Fair Warning has quite a bit of overdubs on it, but the rest of the Van Halen stuff is very, very few overdubs, and he usually solos on the rhythm track, and it just came from years and years and years of playing live. I mean, you can. I mean, that's one thing I always tell young players. If anybody's out there watching this video, you know, how do I make it in the music business? How do I, where, you know, playing clubs, play live, play all day, every day. You know, as much as you can in the garage with somebody. Then go out and take it in the clubs on the weekends, or as many. I mean, Van Halen played. You know, once they got going up, you know, they play anywhere and everywhere. They play, you know, 4 sets a night, 5 days a week, you know, at Gazzari's or something like that. And I used to do that. I mean, I went on the road when I was 19 and playing 5, 6 sets a night. That's where you cut your chops. And so, you know, and that's how I met everybody. When I moved to Los Angeles, I didn't know a soul. And it was 1984. And the only way I ever got anywhere was just, you know, playing in the clubs, going to the clubs, meeting people. And, you know, one thing led to another, and you know, that's how I made a lot. You know, my connections in the music business. It wasn't, you know, I mean, of course we sent tapes out and stuff like that. I did, but you know, and you have to do that kind of thing too. But you know, as far as, you know, I'm not even talking about getting a following. You know, that's part of it. That's the biggest part of it, really. But as far as just purely as a guitar player and a musician, the way that happens, and the reason, you know, a lot of bands, you know, may not have been together that long and or had a lot of live experience, and when they go in the studio, you know, it takes them a long time to cut stuff because they have to sit there and do it over and over again, and I do too when I'm doing certain parts. But the thing with Van Halen, you know, is that they had played live so much. I can't stress that enough. That this was just, you know, second nature when they went in to cut these songs. You know, it was just you know, Ted Templeman, I hate to say this, I mean, he did a great job with Dave, which was probably the most difficult part of producing that band, but really is like, roll tape. It was basically, as far as the basic tracks, man, he's like, how'd you get that Van Halen one guitar sound? Put a couple of SM57s on Eddie's cabinet, and everybody goes, and, and what? I mean, that's what he did, you know, that's all he ever did. No, I mean, Ted's a great producer. Do not get me wrong. And I almost got to work with him. We were going to do a rock record when I was in Dave Roth's band. That never happened. Another one of those things. And Ted was going to produce, and then Ted had some kind of health issue and he couldn't do it. And then Eddie Van Halen came back into the picture and messed my gig up. Dave went back with Van Halen, or attempted to. That's another time. I mean, there were several attempts, but anyway. So. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. And this is, you know, just the start of a lot of the stuff I'm going to do here on the YouTube channel. See you later.